I'm Al McFarlane. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is January 18th, 2023. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. We've got an exciting program for you, but before I begin, I want to invite you to support this work, join this work, be a partner in this work by subscribing to the Insight News YouTube channel. Check us out, subscribe, share, tell a friend. And even right now, if you are on any of the several platforms we're streaming through, tell some friends, bring them into the conversation. I promise you, we deliver robust conversations. Today's program will do that with my special guests. They are Alysha Price, who's founder and CEO of the Price Dynamic, and Alex Steinman, who is the co-founder of the Coven. Both of them fascinating, determined, brilliant young leaders, young women, and entrepreneurs talking about building community, building wealth. I want to begin, though, with our hot topics of the day. And we picked a couple of things that we think bear noticing. One is the situation in Haiti. I'm looking at a report from this morning from NPR. The report is entitled, "As its only remaining elected officials depart, Haiti reaches a breaking point." The visual is of a man walking past a burning barricade during a protest against Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry, calling for his resignation, that in the capital of Port-au-Prince. And, here's the story. Haiti is a country that's long been beset by catastrophic and political turmoil. It's facing perhaps its deepest challenge in recent decades as its piecemeal government, now lacking any democratically elected officials, struggles to chart a path forward amid gang violence and a cholera outbreak. The constitutional mandate of Haiti's de facto ruler, Prime Minister Ariel Henry, which some viewed as questionable from the start, as he was never technically sworn in, ended more than a year ago. The country has had no president since its last one, Jovenel Moise, I might be hopefully saying the right way, was assassinated in 2021. Its Senate is supposed to have 30 members, and its lower legislative chamber should have 119. But all of those seats are unfilled. Haiti's elected mayors were all reappointed or replaced in 2020. And last week, its 10 remaining senators departed office after their terms ended, leaving behind a nation's worth of elected offices that now sit empty after years of canceled elections. Final note, according to Haitian-born political scientist Robert Fatton, he's at the University of Virginia, this is a catastrophic situation. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the current crisis is one of the most severe crises that Haiti has ever confronted. Well, we know that Haiti has been in trouble from its inception, from when Africans, Black Haitians, wrestled power from the French colonists that controlled the island, and did so on the battlefield. And in a sense, one could say these Black people have been paying the price for their freedom ever since. And the price often, it seems, has included that the country, people in the country turn on themselves, turn inward towards dysfunction and mayhem. Well, we wish that a reckoning can emerge that will bring peace and prosperity to Haiti. Haiti deserves it. Love to know what your thoughts are, what your feelings are. If you have comments about this story, about the discourse about political and cultural and economic development in Black-led countries in the hemisphere, we'd love to have your comments. The second hot topic is closer to home. And according to a story today, published today, George Floyd's lawyer is asking the judge to throw out the murder convictions not, excuse me, I said that wrong. Derek Chauvin's lawyer is asking the court to throw out the conviction of Chauvin for the murder or the death of George Floyd. So in the story dated today, it says that a year of protest happened on May 25th, 2020, George Floyd's death at I'm mixing my notes here. I'll restart. Derek Chauvin's attorney is set to argue that Minnesota should throw out his state murder conviction in the death of George Floyd in a hearing today. And the former police officer, Derek Chauvin, was sentenced to 22 and a half years in June 2021 after he was convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He was found guilty of pressing his knee against Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes, resulting in Floyd's death in May of 2020. The death triggered a wave of protest against police misconduct and a racial reckoning nationwide. Chauvin's attorney, William F. Mormon, is going to argue that the pretrial publicity was more extensive than any trial ever in Minnesota, and that publicity and ongoing civil unrest and the alleged exclusion of evidence and misconduct from the prosecution led to an unfair trial. That's what he's going to say. Well, we'll watch that. We'll see where that goes. It's a story that it's really a global story, and we here are in the center of it. So let's proceed to our program today. And our thought today is that we're going to talk about on Wednesdays, business creation, entrepreneurship. We'll go down that path with my two guests today. And I'm going to start, I believe, with Alex Steinman. She is the founder of the Coven. Alex, good afternoon. How are you? Welcome to the conversation.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be back. Thanks so much for having me, Al.
Well, it's good to see you again. Let me start by having you describe your business, your mission, what the Coven is, what it's doing, and we'll go into more after that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Coven is a co-working community based here in the
Hold it. I called it Coven. You said Coven. So
Coven.
That's a good part to start with. Is my mispronunciation common?
It is very common. I think most people see Cove. And so I like to think about it's an oven, not an oven.
I'm curious. So what's the name signify? Why that name? Why was it chosen? What does it mean?
So there's 4 co-founders, myself and 3 others, and we were all friends as we were building the business. And we knew what the name was before we even had the business. And the name itself is really centered in the magic that happens when women, non-binary, and trans people come together. And if you look it up in the dictionary, the Coven does mean a group of 13 witches. But when you think about the root of the word coven, it means to convene or to gather, which we love. And we also love that it has a little bit of teeth to it too. So we don't mind the witchy vibes, but truly it's all about gathering and coming together and really seeing what folks can do when they, bring their own businesses to life, when they step into a leadership role or economically empower themselves through leadership development and entrepreneurial development, which is what our business is all about. So like I said, we're a co-working community. We have 2 locations, one in Minneapolis, one in St. Paul. We're growing outside of the state as well with franchising. Which is a really exciting opportunity for us. We believe that, community is in community. And so having someone else own their own community space, we can provide them with the playbook of how to do it, but they know best how to engage their people. So we're excited to do that as well.
Let me react to the name conversation that you had and how I'm interpreting that, taking it in, is there's a certain audacity in that naming and in that process. 2 things happen there. One is that you are claiming and demonstrating and acting out of your right to define and to create the image and story, the narrative of who you are and what you are doing in the marketplace and in the world, number one. And then with intention, it seems to me, given the dictionary definition that you gave, you believe and are demonstrating your ability to smash ignorance, to destroy it, to shatter it, and to bring awareness and light and clarity and reasonableness, thinking into the public discourse. Am I far off on either of those?
Wow, I'm gonna rewatch this and take your language. I'll give you all the credit, but I'll take that language. Yeah, we really believe that, we can own the language. We can own. Women traditionally have been called witches or worse, right? And I won't say it because we're on public radio, but I do. But I do believe that women should own it and take control of what they want to be called. And truly, I believe that witches, if you will, have been persecuted for centuries because of what would be deemed maybe untraditional ways of thinking. And I'm really excited about kind of the resurgence of women really claiming power, claiming their ownership, claiming their bodies, claiming their power. And that's really what the Coven is all about and why we started.
I'm interpreting your use of the word magic, not as hocus pocus, but as majesty, and as wisdom. As wisdom at its core, that is majestic as well.
Absolutely.
So let's go. Well, thank you. That's a good beginning, I think. I think setting the parameters of the conversation through definition is important, and I think you've done that. Thank you for doing that. Mm-hmm. And so tell me more about the business, about the Coven.
Yeah. So when we first started, all four co-founders came from advertising and worked in large agencies and really were working towards, climbing the ladder in that industry. Some of us had children, myself included, while we were in the industry, and we found ourselves in a position of being either aged out or, parented out. So once you had a kid, you became kind of irrelevant. and the challenge that I had was, how do we continue to grow into a leadership role when I don't see people who look like me in leadership, right? You have to see it to believe it. And I think I knew that I could get to that space. In fact, I did get to a director level in that time, but it wasn't easy or comfortable. And I felt like we deserve better. We deserve more mentors. We deserve more, community. We deserve more magic. Like we're saying together, what is that energy like when women, non-binary and trans folks come together? And that's really what we decided with creating this business was, how do you create a space of physical and psychological safety? Because those are the elements that are needed to really start a business, to grow your business, to step into the unknown, to be uncomfortable, and to maybe take a new career leap. And so what we got excited about early on was so many women were saying, I don't feel comfortable in my workplace. I wish I had a place where I felt comfortable and where I could really, flex and find myself in a space of community. And that's really what we started, was kind of, what would it be like if you could come in here and show up as any version of yourself? Now, that was 5 years ago, and then the pandemic and so forth, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But now that, the future of work is here and people are navigating working in the office, out of the office, finding flex space, and trying to figure out what's going to make them most productive, but maybe more importantly, happy in their lives. Co-working is seeing a resurgence, and we're excited to have survived the pandemic and come out the other side and with a growth mindset.
Go into the language you used, women, non-binary, and trans.
Yeah.
That intentional invitation.
Absolutely.
To create a working space. Explain that more. What's the background? What's the circumstance that caused both the need and the opportunity to emerge in your work?
Yeah, so our spaces are open to all, right? But we really center everything that we do around the experiences of those three categories, and there's many more. Gender fluid is probably a better word to capture, the broad spectrum of people who walk through our spaces and who engage with our content. We're really intentional from the beginning, because most spaces were created for men or created for white men or with white men in mind. That means workspaces in any environment, really. And so we thought about, what would it be like if we centered the people who need these spaces the most, invited everyone to participate in being in those spaces. And how would that change the mood? How would that change the trajectory of all people? And what's exciting is that when, anyone comes into our space, they recognize, wow, this feels different because I haven't been in a space that has centered women, non-binary, and trans folks. And when we say non-binary and trans folks, we wanted to call that out because those, like a lot of non-binary and trans folks, are often left out of those conversations and spaces.
What is non-binary?
Non-binary is someone who may not identify with, using she, her pronouns or he, him pronouns, right? So someone who maybe finds themselves in a space somewhere on the spectrum of gender fluidity. And so again, we want to make sure that people feel welcome and we honor their lived experiences, whatever that may be. What's really fun is having, men in the space who come in and go, wow, I feel, even though this isn't centering me, I feel better being in this space. I feel like I can be my whole self in this community, which, our intention was exactly that, so that everyone could enter in with, a renewed sense of self. And I think really leaning into that femme energy allows for everyone to see themselves.
You probably said this already, but how has your life changed since you started this business?
Oh, just like a 180. Where to begin? Anytime you start a business, you go through the ups and downs of, finding your own voice and trusting yourself. I think mentoring business owners is what I love to do. And that's why franchising is a really exciting space for us to be, is because I get to work with small businesses who are ready to open their own communities. And I get to provide what I have learned, right? Which is that not everyone knows, nobody knows what they're doing when they start a business. And even when they're growing a business, even 5-10 years down the road, there's still unknowns. And so really leaning into that, what my co-founder Bethany says is kind of the messy middle of, being uncomfortable. That's been something that I had to learn along the way. And, I think having children maybe makes you a little bit more resilient to some of the ups and downs of life, because you just really never know. You never know what's coming out of their little mouths or bodies. And so stepping into, entrepreneurship is really like taking care of a new baby and nurturing it along the way. And I've learned how to both live in the gray area, but also take care of myself and ensure that, I have the stamina and energy to keep up.
Let me ask you before I go to our next guest, and then I'll bring you back in to let people know how to connect with you. How do they contact you to be part of or learn about the opportunity?
Yeah, you can find us at thecoven.com or hello@thecoven.com if you're interested in connecting with us via email. On Instagram, we're at thecoven.co, and on Twitter, we're at thecoven.co. So excited to connect with all of you.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm going to continue the program, bringing in my next guest. My next guest is Alysha Price. She's the founder of an organization. What's the name of the organization? Let's see. I'm looking at her bio here. Alysha, hold on one second here. And the Price Dynamic, of course. CEO and founder of the Price Dynamic. I'm trying to navigate through my notes on my screen, so if I'm a little disjointed, I can tell you that's the reason. But Alysha is from North Minneapolis, where I am right now. She's part of this neighborhood. I asked her which Price family she belonged to, and she threw out her uncle's name, Shane. Shane is a dear friend. Everybody knows Shane Price, and therefore everybody knows the Price family. It's a great brand, a great name. Alysha, welcome to the conversation. Thank you for being here. I want to just say a little bit about the bio I've got in front of me, that you are a qualified neutral family mediator, trained motivational interviewer with a bachelor's degree in human services and family studies and a master's degree in management. As I said, you're a North Minneapolis native. You've been in the work of eliminating education and health disparities for over 20 years. You are a 2019-2020 Innovation Fellow, recipient of the Bank of America Emerging Leaders Program, and the recipient of the Minneapolis Award for Outstanding Commitment to Community. And, as a CEO and as a founder you've demonstrated a personal investment to improve communication within co-parenting families, reflecting a belief that effective communication is the cornerstone to healing fractured family dynamics. Well, let's stop there with the intro and bring you and your voice to the table.
Yes.
Alysha, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored.
Well, it's an honor to be with you and Alex as well. Let's take a minute and talk about your business, your vision, what you do, and how you do it.
Yes. So the Price Dynamic is a co-parenting education, visitation, and consulting firm. And what we do is, in short, help parents stop arguing in front of their kids. So we try to get straight to the point. But we help single parents to become cooperative co-parents and learning what it means to team in order to raise our children to be healthy and whole. We recognize that there's a gap in services around actually supporting parents to have the wherewithal, the resilience to work together as a team and, not leaving them alone as they're doing that, whether they're transitioning from a divorce, if they've never been married, or also working with families who find out through genetic testing that they're now a parent. So we're working within the gamut of what parenting looks like. And I'd also like to add, not just family dynamics that have broken or torn or across households, but we also work with married couples who are trying to figure out how to have that perfect dance of parenting together, sharing values and structure for raising their children.
That's amazing. And you do this as a business, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So people hear me say all the time that growing up in Kansas City, my grandma would say, mind your business, boy, mind your business, right? And the statement was a metaphor that said that everything around you is business, and you need to pay attention. And so I've come to often say, our health is our business.
Yes.
Our wealth is our business. Our education is our business. And we need to look through a business lens at all we do, because that is the process by which we establish value of our time, our thoughts, our energy, and our priorities. What do you think about that?
I would agree 100%. And I will add to that is get out of grown folks' business is another thing I used to hear. Right. And so when it comes to the co-parenting dynamic, grown folks' business is what's making sure that the family works, what those nuances are around communication or around behavior and how we're engaging with one another. And so absolutely working on health and what happens within relationship can be a business. We've been in business now for 3 years. And we're not going nowhere. Family dynamics are here to stay. We all know what it means to want your family to work, to care about those that are raising you, and to aspire to really raise well children. Especially in the Black community, we know it takes a village. And so the Price Dynamic is here to be a part of that village and supporting you to change some of those generational cycles of ways that may have not worked for us. So
let's sit in that for a minute and talk about things we all know about, but we don't talk enough about.
Yes.
We talk about it kind of in passing, but we never really drill with intention on a precise description of these challenges. So talk about challenges of families, of parenting, specifics, and how we either ignore them or fear them or hope something else comes out of the sky to help them. Now, all of those strategies don't work, that there's something we can do, which is what you're delivering, right? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Some of the challenges that we see are parents that didn't really plan what their family would look like, right? We know that having children is a blessing and becoming a family, it all is fine and well when we're, learning that there's a pregnancy. in some cases. And in that, we're so happy sometimes that we're not planning about like, what are our values for this child that we're raising? What type of structure do we intend to have for this child? What are simply bedtimes, curfews, right? So we're not talking about a lot of those things. And then once the child is here or children are here, we're trying to impose now what our values are, how we grew up, what we think should happen. And that may not be aligned with the person who you're attempting to co-parent with. And then that turns into ways of now we're not hearing each other. We're not communicating well. And then we're doing that in front of the children. And then that snowballs, right? And we keep that going and keep that growing. And so what we see here at the Price Dynamic, a lot of the times are arguments around finance. How we're caring for the child, who should be caring for the child, how much money it actually takes to raise a child. We also see issue around who should be around your children when the family dynamic is broken or is now transitioning to a different type of a dynamic. Should girlfriends or boyfriends or bonus parents be around this child or children? And where will they be? Simple things like, what school should we enroll our child in? These are conversations that when we're becoming parents or prior to even deciding to be parents, that we're not oftentimes talking about. And so at the Price Dynamic, we kind of catch it on the back end, but we're helping families to redefine their family. And a big piece for us is redefining your family before the courts do. We're not recognizing a lot of times that when we can't get it right, it moves into a jurisdiction that is not really meant for family issues, right? And then we're relying on the courts to help us to untangle some of those things.
How big is the problem? Meaning, that's when you're stating it, how big is the opportunity?
Yes.
So what do you think?
Yeah, the problem is huge. It spans all families. Opportunity is amazing. The Price Dynamic is working very closely with Hennepin County family courts in particular, where we have a very steady referral of families that have been court ordered to parenting time, so supervision services. And also, this is astounding to me, so I will share, between 2019 and 2022, there were 3,214 paternity cases in between Hennepin County and Ramsey County. And now when we know that there's a paternity case, we're looking for who is the father, right? And this is genetic testing that has to happen. So once we find out who that person is, we're now expecting these two individuals to co-parent. And who's here to help them, right? And some of them know each other, but some of them don't. And some of them have never met their children. And so we're providing a safe space for just even that subset of families to learn how to work together and to connect.
How do people reach you if they are listening or when they tell somebody who they know needs help? How do they connect with your organization?
You can Google the Price Dynamic. But we're also at, www.thepricedynamic.com. We have an Instagram page, The Price Dynamic, and we're also on Facebook at The Price Dynamic. And people typically find me, Alysha Price, and I respond to several messages as well. We can be reached by phone at 763-432-7277. And we are located in New Hope.
Let me bring Alex back in. And before we started the program today, we were talking about how we let the program flow. I believe I suggested pulling up a video of Noah Trevor's departing program, because he talked about Black women in a way that I think Black women should be talked about affirmingly, lovingly. And I wanted to just show a little bit of that because I want that to be what undergirds the balance of the conversation. The three of us talking, and from my side, the spirit of the conversation, Alex and Alysha, is in celebration of the power, the strength, the clarity, and the strength. Well, the strength that women bring to community, to family, and to the universe. Let's check this out, and we'll come back.
This is random for some, but special shout out to Black women. I've often been credited with, having these grand ideas of people like, oh, Trevor, you're so smart and and then I'm like, who do you think teaches me? Who do you think has shaped me, nourished me, informed me? From my mom, my my aunts, all these Black women in my life, but then in America as well. I always tell people, if you truly want to learn about America, talk to Black women. Yeah, because unlike everybody else, Black women cannot afford to around and find out. Black people understand how hard it is when things go bad, especially in America, but any place where Black people exist, whether it's Brazil, whether it's South Africa, wherever it is, when things go bad, Black people know that it gets worse for them. But Black women in particular, they know what shit is, genuine. People always be shocked. They'll be like, why do Black women turn out the way they do in America? Why do they vote the way yeah, because they know what happens if things do not go the way it should. They cannot afford to around and find out. And to Black women who have taught me, all of them, the scholars online, the authors.
He goes on and on. That's a wonderful statement, and I wanted you all to react to it. And I wanted to, as I said, use that as a baseline, sort of an understanding. It's Al McFarlane's appreciation of you and of Black women, the women in my life, my wife, Bobby, my daughter, Batala. I think both of you guys know Batala McFarlane, and my daughters, Celine and Chrissy and Shelley, and my mom. But all the Black women in my life, and Yasmin, and you, Alex, and you, Alysha. It's a tribute from me to all of you. What do you think about the statement he made, first of all, and how does that energy affirm or inform your work? Alex, what do you think?
Well, the first thing that came to mind, and I saw this clip, soon after it aired, and it was so powerful. And, I don't know Trevor Noah, but it felt awesome, to be honored and recognized by, someone who gets it. And I think, the first thing that came to mind is, women in the US are starting 1,800 new businesses every day. That number has gone up since that survey came out in 2019. That was pre-COVID numbers. We know that Black women are the majority of that number, starting new businesses. And it's because we're solving problems, because we recognize that the systems that currently exist can't solve the problem. And so we either have to live within that system and change from the inside, or we have to create something brand new and try something. I think Trevor Noah hit on this too, in that, we typically only get one shot, right? So because we have so many onlys, what I call onlyism, when, you get to the top or you own your own business and you're a Black woman and something goes wrong, the weight that you carry of, not only the people who, could fill your seat afterwards, but you carry the weight of your ancestors, you carry the weight of the generations before you who fought so hard to get you to that role. And if, mistake by your own or someone else's mistake, that's your fault. And, that's hard to fall. Right. And I think that's a real challenge that I think we all face, as many of us are onlys in our position, where if it all goes down, we're the ones who get hurt the most. And it, can reflect poorly upon the rest of us. And so I think we carry a lot of that weight. And so hearing those words from, Trevor and others, and hearing kind of, you, Al, and other people who've recognized this is a really great opportunity to honor Black women. It feels, supported, hands under your feet, and on your back.
Alysha, what do you think?
I would have to say I absolutely agree. The first thing that popped into my head is we stand in the gap. We know what it feels like to, not have, and we aspire to have more constantly, and we're holding that for everyone around us. And that's a part of what Alex mentioned, of that problem solving, that willingness to stand in the gap. And I think that we just have this type of nurturing and love that covers so many and goes so far. We're so unaware sometimes of the reach that we have. And I feel like his emotion in that video speaks to that reach. We span so many cultures, so many lives and touch so many people. And I would just say to just be aware, of who we are, how powerful we are, and to own that every day, because we're influencing by just being, by just showing up.
So,
And,
so let me ask you both right now, what do you say has contributed to your success in business so far? Alex, then Alysha.
Well, there's so many people. I'll name one person in particular, and she might be watching this, Shantara Hardy, who's a local entrepreneur and community builder herself. She calls herself a gatherer, I think is what the word, or collector of people. That's what she uses. But I just know that she's got, my name in her mouth when I'm not in, and when I'm not in rooms, and I'll get a call from somebody who I've never met before who says, Shantara said, I need to talk to you. And so I'm here to call you. And I think it's people like that who've been in my life who have put me in positions that I didn't even know that I was ready for. And that's the power, I think, of Black women, is we know not only our own strength, but we know the strength of the women around us. And we are most of us will, put each other in those positions, even because we know that you're ready. Alysha, if I were to ever be in a position where I knew someone who needed you, I would put you in front of them before putting myself in there, because I know that you're the right person to fill that. And so I think that's the power of Black women and our own magic and majesty, to use Al's words.
And what are you discovering, Alysha, as the things that contribute to your success, even though your business is relatively new? I think you see yourself, you certainly presenting yourself as successful. What is the source of that success?
You know what? It's my family's legacy. I learned how to love unconditionally. And that is just kind of the underbelly of what the price dynamic is all about. Loving people as, who they are and how they show up. And I saw many relationship types. I saw, divorces and marriages and breakups and makeups. And in my family, all of those people still came around for holidays. It didn't matter if you were, the ex, you were still welcome. And I think holding that and knowing that as a family value of the Price family has really helped to keep me grounded in what it looks like for the Price dynamic to continue to succeed.
Have you both experienced challenges that brought doubt or concern about whether you're on the right path or made the right decision? And the question really beyond that is, how do you move forward in your business journey despite the challenges that sometimes seem either insurmountable or daunting? What do you think, Alex?
Well, I'll tell you that owning a business that's, a physical space in the middle of COVID was a real challenge. We opened our St. Paul location just 6 weeks before the pandemic. So we didn't know anything. We had never heard the word coronavirus in the United States. And so I think what prepared us for that was, being flexible and being able to adapt, our adaptability, our entrepreneurial mindset, which is like, this is a new problem. Let's figure out how to solve this. Within 24 hours of, closing our business temporarily for COVID, we turned around a digital community to keep our community connected. And I think that's one thing that entrepreneurs have to continually do is listen to what your customer needs and adapt fully. I also think that the pandemic presented an opportunity for us to examine fully, what would this look like if this no longer existed? How would I move through life if this no longer existed? I think it's like a therapy question, where it's like, could this happen? Has it happened? And could I get through it if it did happen? And I think examining that over and over again during the course of COVID, because it was so unknown, helped prepare us for what could happen. And fortunately, we didn't have to shut down. We were able to pay all of our staff and keep our staff on hand. We were able to, pivot our company and pirouette our way through that. And we've come out on the other side with real growth. And I think that, again, that all comes down to being able to be resilient and be adaptable. And it takes a lot of support to do that. And so having a network of people to continually tap you and say, having your Shantara of the world say, you've got this and you can keep going. Or even if you can't keep going, you're going to be okay. knowing that you have a little bit of that mental and emotional stability in the background is so important. And that's why I think Alysha's work to bring stable communication to families is like beyond important right now.
Yeah.
And so what challenges did you find in your business venture, and how have you addressed forward movement despite any challenges you encountered?
You know, an early assumption for me was that people would just think that co-parents should work together. I thought, well, I did it. I'm a co-parent. This makes sense for me. But, you know, lots of times people are pointing the finger at each other and thinking the other person needs more work done than they do. So I was really optimistic about people just, you know, breaking down my door and calling my phone like, I need help. But that's not what happened. And so very quickly, I had to shift. I had to be willing to be nimble and to pivot and to think about, how do I reach my target population, and how do I reach the families that really need what we're offering but may not know it. And so we quickly shifted to, you know, a business to business structure, and looking at how do we provide our resources and our support to businesses that actually work with this population. So if there are schools or organizations that are working with families that are identifying as single parents or struggling with what it looks like to co-parent, maybe dealing with custody issues or divorcing. And so we took that route to then start to find the families that we actually wanted to impact. And that is not initially how I set out to do our work. And it really came down to being willing to pivot and to listen to community and to do exactly what it took to reach the population that we wanted to serve, and being willing to see my vision play out in a different way than I anticipated.
How does the notion of community work in your business? Let me set this question up by saying that in my generation, at least, the stories you hear business people say, Black men and women say, is that we don't get support from our own community. We live under this cloud that says that our people believe that the white man's ice is colder, that the white man's fire is hotter, and that if white people do it, it's probably real. But if somebody Black is doing it, there's got to be a problem with it. So part of our socialization and our mental programming is programming that allows, encourages, forces us to see ourselves as inherently deficient, and our community as inherently and ultimately defective, and that the language of success is getting out, getting away, right? Never dealing with those challenges that we have, and never seeing ourselves as a market that's real, while at the same time we know that the whole world views us as a market and gets rich out of our inability to serve each other and to do transactions with each other that grow wealth and grow economies. So how do you, in your generation, see the change, or is there a change in our community's ability to see itself creating a place for wealth creation among us, for us, by us? Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I definitely see a shift, and it comes from I think looking back at what community could be, right? Being self-sufficient ourselves. We must support ourselves and within our community. I believe one person who's been on your show, Al, Lulit Mola from the Black Collective Foundation, a new foundation that's one of the first Black-led community foundations with an endowment in Minnesota. Her work is all about building collective power through economic development, specifically within the Black community. So how do we fund ourselves and not just lean on philanthropy to do the good work, right? The do good work that Minnesotans so often do in the nonprofit world. And so I think what I've been seeing, at least in my generation, is a desire to economically empower one another. So like, how do I buy from Black women? These earrings are made from a Black woman. How do I eat in Black establishments? Where can I find the best Black made toothpaste? I mean, those are like lists and things that are coming out here in the last handful of years that I think people are really craving. Community connection not just from where can I be in proximity to other Black people, but where can I truly put my money so that I know that a Black family is benefiting from this. And we see that in, the establishment of Black chambers, the establishment of, these public and private partnerships that are coming together to help make sure that procurement in large organizations have a huge pipeline of Black and Brown owned businesses to feed into the growth of larger organizations. So it's really exciting to hear that, people are energized by doing this. I hope it's sustainable. I certainly hope that communities like mine are creating spaces where those goods and services can be traded among people, but also that we can then get them in front of, large corporations or larger organizations that could, help raise the trajectory of that organization.
Alysha, I started earlier with the notion of our health is our business, right? And when I hear your story and the work you're doing, I've said this to other people that are in the sort of the personal development and therapy and counseling work. On the one hand, we talk about health disparities, how far we are measurably different and disadvantaged from the norm or white people in Minnesota. And the question is, should we see that as a throw up my hands type opportunity, or should we see it as a dig in and get to work opportunity? I think what we're talking about is a fair presentation of opportunity to solve problems. So Alex, you're saying problem solving, right? And you are solving problems. And what would it be like if there were 100 or 200 counselors providing parenting and counseling and mental health and health services and physical fitness services, people on every other block in the community doing it and getting paid to do it, building an economy and serving each other? What would that be like? What do you think?
I believe that would be absolutely amazing. It is in my mind, you say you don't just set up shop and people just show up, but I truly believe if we were to operate in that fashion, people would show up. I attribute, the success that we've had thus far to, word of mouth and families coming in and saying, we've had people walk in the door and say, I didn't know what I was walking into. And now I see Black people and I feel safe. Right. And so having a space, I've learned in the last couple of years for families of color in particular to talk about what happens in their home is essential. And they don't feel comfortable necessarily doing that with people who don't look like them and don't understand them.
Because that's the gateway to the court coming in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also started with, helping with family mediation, because we have lots of individuals that are not of color who are mediating families of color and don't understand how we speak to each other, don't understand the affliction in our voice, the tone of voice, the cadence. There are so many nuances to the ways that we communicate that, we need support with, and then we need to be able to dismantle a lot of the stigma and stereotype that comes with, communities of color and in the ways family engage with each other. And so I think if we were to set up spaces where people could freely communicate and get the support that they need, actually ask for the support that they need, that would be amazing. One of the things that we've struggled with here at the Price Dynamic is that people assume that our business is a nonprofit. And they assume that when you help families, it should always be free. And so I would also encourage people to understand that when you are working on your healing, it should also be something that you're willing to invest in. The Price Dynamic is a social enterprise. We are not just a nonprofit organization, and my family should be paid for the work that we put in and that we do.
Yeah.
And so also shifting, our thinking around the importance of investing in ourselves and securing our families and dismantling, the disparities that are in our community.
I
Alex?
appreciate you saying that, Alysha, because we get that a lot too. You know, we're an economic development type organization with educational opportunities for both leaders and entrepreneurs. And the first thing people think is, oh, this must be a nonprofit. And, you know, I kind of chuckle every time because it's like, oh, you can't do good in, you know, you can't be paid, or you can't do good if you're a social enterprise. And I think that's not the case. And I do see a huge shift in this. Many of the businesses that are being opened right now have a, you know, social mission, despite being a for-profit business. And I think it's important that we do more of that, right? I think having more for-profits that Black women are starting will only beget more of those, and I think encourage people. We can't, you know, see what's not there, and I'm energized by hearing your story of it too, and how that kind of nonprofit energy doesn't feed anyone, you know, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Well, I think this notion of entrepreneurship is just so important, and I think that both of you, you know, are doing phenomenal work in demonstrating the value of the enterprise mind and clarifying our discussion about money and profit and profitability. You know, so you both have said this or alluded to it. You haven't said it, but too often our community still is mind shackled by this idea that wealth is somebody else's domain and not ours, that we feel that to be wealthy or to want to pursue wealth is really something that is not an asset, but makes you, and so we have too many of us, I think, determined to be mediocre and resistant to their own personal call to ascension, to development, and to productivity, because we've been acculturated to think that just enough is enough when it really isn't. What do you guys think? I'm not saying what I really want to say. I'm struggling for the words, but I'm in a direction. The direction is, how do we change the narrative about entrepreneurship in our community and among our people? That's what I want to say. What if when a spaceship landed or dropped in on Plymouth and Penn, and whoever the beings were, they asked, who are those people on the corner of Plymouth and Penn? And the other said, oh, those are the Black people. They are entrepreneurs. What if we change the definition globally of who we are? Is that doable, Alex? What do you think?
I think it is doable. And I do think it takes, you know, those who've, you know, been successful entrepreneurs to come back and show people what it is to be an entrepreneur and what it takes, and help people educate people on how to do it effectively, efficiently, and sustainably. I think that becoming an entrepreneur looks really daunting when you don't have any money, you don't have generational wealth. It's part of the reason why, you know, banks, well, I mean, there's so many reasons why banks aren't funding entrepreneurs of color, but, you know, because we don't have, a lot of us don't have assets, right? We don't have assets that we can take to the bank. We don't have a friends and family round that we can tap, you know, a rich uncle and say, hey, I have napkin math. Can you fund my business? In the same way that we're seeing white kids from Stanford, you know, do that and get their first $1 million of funding to start a ride sharing business. You know what I'm saying? So what I think is important is that we build generational wealth in our communities by going back and educating and funding the next generation of Black entrepreneurs. And that's what we're here for. That's, you know, that's why we're in the Twin Cities. That's why we continue to, you know, support and bring in community funded members to make sure that our space is accessible to as many people as possible. It's why we have free digital memberships through Hennepin County to make sure that folks get access to our entrepreneurial content. And that's really important, right? Education is important just as much as funding is. And we want to make sure that, you know, people have access to the resources that they need. And again, I think what's going to change that is Black entrepreneurs helping Black entrepreneurs. And I think that's why we're seeing more Black women start more businesses now more than ever, because we're seeing people be successful, sell their companies for millions, and then be able to give back to the community.
Alex, what was your career path before becoming the entrepreneur that you are?
I was in advertising. So I went to the University of Minnesota and studied journalism and public relations, and then worked at an ad agency in town called Fallon. I was one of the only Black employees, one of the only Black women there for about a decade, and then left to start the Coven.
Okay. And I mentioned your training background, but did you have business background before stepping out into your own business, Alysha?
I did. Actually, prior to stepping into my business, I was in nonprofit leadership for several years as an executive, supporting a very well-known organization in North Minneapolis, and had worked in nonprofit leadership for years prior to that.
Okay. We got about 5 minutes left before we wrap up. I wanted to just open the floor to make sure that both of you are inviting people to know you, to connect with you, and to drive home, the point that you said, but wanted to make sure people get. So, Alex, what is it that we didn't say that you want to say in the next minute or two?
Well, community is so important, right? And so whether you're looking for, a place to be after work, or you're looking for people during work, if you're someone who has the ability to work flexibly, I think one of the things that the Coven offers is a place for connection and a place for opportunity. One thing we missed during COVID was those happenstance moments where you sit next to somebody with a cup of coffee, you ask to borrow their charger, and the next thing you know, you're starting a business together. And that's a real story that happens at the Coven all the time. And so, I'm so excited to be back in, IRL in real life with people, and reconnecting with humans. My work through the Coven allows me to do a lot of incredible work with the public and the private sector and nonprofit sector. I'm a part of a coalition called the Groundbreak Coalition, which is led by the McKnight Foundation, which is one of the core pillars there is about bringing more money to Black entrepreneurs. And so I'm excited to be leading that group, that work group, to bring billions of dollars into the Black community and ensure that our communities are stepping into entrepreneurship and are able to sustain and grow themselves. So more on that to come, but I'm really honored to be a part of that. My work at the Coven takes me in a lot of places around economic development.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to close with you, Alysha, and I'll ask you, we mentioned your Uncle Shane and the Price family. To talk about whose shoulders you stand on more broadly. Who's your mama? Who's your daddy? Who's your grandpa? Where y'all from? And all that to say where Alysha is going, not only in the next year or two, but with a generational lens.
Mhm.
What is it that you're going to be creating for the world and for the next century through the steps you take today?
Yes. Well, I stand on the shoulders of my grandmother, Cherie Lovelace Jackson. She was a very strong and powerful woman and had signs all around her house that said, "Yes, you can." I miss her dearly, and I now own all of those signs, and they're throughout my home and my office. And so I believe each day and every step of the way that what I think of, I can do. And that is how the Price dynamic has actually come to fruition. I believe for years to come, what we have created as far as our legacy and generational change is that you can define your family before you have a family. Being intentional about what you want to do as a parent, how you want your children to be raised. And we have single-handedly changed that in my family. I am doing it better than my parents did, and my son is going to do it better than I am. And I'm positive that my grandchildren will have a very different outcome and will understand what co-parenting looks like, but actually be raising their children in the same household. And so we're really working to create an environment where parenting can be what you want it to be, and removing that stigma. And at the Price Dynamic, we believe in the inherent dignity of all parents. So if you make a decision to do better, we're here to support. And we hope to see that happen for years to come.
Alysha Price, thank you so much. Alex Steinman, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Keep up the work. Both of you must come back. I want to spend more time in the areas of your stories and your successes. I'm Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.